Imagine a king so charming they called him the Merry Monarch. Yet behind the smiles lay a trail of humiliation, disease, bastard children, and tragedy that nearly tore England apart. This is the real story of Charles II, and trust me, it's darker than any tabloid could dream. It all starts with trauma that would break most men. January 30th, 1649. Charles is just 18. He watches helplessly as his father, King Charles I, is publicly beheaded outside Whitehall. The executioner lifts the severed head and shouts, "Behold the head of a traitor!" The young prince flees into exile. For 11 brutal years, he's hunted across Europe, penniless, wearing the same rags for months, watching his family beg for scraps from foreign courts. He nearly dies several times. But the deepest scar? He learns one harsh lesson. His father tried to rule with rigid morality and absolute control, and they chopped his head off for it. So when Charles finally returns and reclaims the throne in 1660, he vows never to be controlled, or to control. He unleashes everything the Puritans had banned: theater, dancing, Christmas, and endless pleasure. Orgies, public affairs, scandal after scandal. The Restoration Court becomes a glittering, debauched playground. And at the center of it all? Women. Charles didn't just have affairs. He made infidelity an institution. Picture Whitehall Palace. Secret passages linking bedrooms. A rotation of mistresses who all knew about each other. They competed for his favor, watched each other rise and fall, and stayed at court even when they lost, forced to witness the winner's triumph every day. His most powerful mistresses held real sway. Barbara Villiers, later Duchess of Cleveland, the fiery, extravagant beauty who bore him 5 acknowledged children. She openly took other lovers, acrobats, courtiers, and Charles didn't care. He was obsessed. Louise de Kérouaille, Duchess of Portsmouth, a French Catholic sent as a sophisticated spy. She whispered in his ear, and suddenly English policy tilted toward France, all because of pillow talk. Nell Gwyn, the witty orange seller turned actress, a profession then linked to prostitution. She won his heart with humor. Legend says she once dangled their son out a window, joking she'd drop him unless Charles gave the boy a title. Laughing, the king instantly made him Duke of St. Albans. But the true victim? Queen Catherine of Braganza, the Portuguese princess, who arrived in 1662 expecting a fairy tale marriage. She barely spoke English. Within days, Charles delivers the cruelest blow. His pregnant mistress, Barbara Villiers, will become one of Catherine's ladies of the bedchamber. That means Barbara would dress and undress the queen every day, the woman sleeping with her husband in her private chambers. Catherine fainted from the shock and humiliation. When she recovered, she begged him to reconsider. He refused. The court ladies even threatened to resign if she didn't accept it. Charles had turned the entire palace against his own wife. Here are a few haunting portraits of the era's royal mistresses and court beauties, women who ruled through beauty and scandal. This is Barbara Villiers in all her commanding glory, the uncrowned queen who dominated the court. And Nell Gwyn, the sharp-tongued commoner who charmed a king with wit alone. The queen suffered miscarriage after miscarriage, desperate for an heir. Meanwhile, Charles fathered at least 12 acknowledged illegitimate children. Historians sometimes count up to 14, all with his mistresses. They got titles, palaces, dukedoms. The court whispered that Catherine must be barren. The psychological torment was unbearable. Trapped in a loveless marriage, watching her husband prove his virility everywhere but with her. The damage spread further. In an era without antibiotics, venereal diseases, especially syphilis, the French pox, ravaged the aristocracy. Charles himself showed symptoms: fevers, sores, endless mercury treatments, which often did more harm than good. His mistresses had other lovers. Those lovers had wives. the infection traced through the elite like poison in the bloodline. Charles was, in effect, the court's unwitting patient zero. Then came the ultimate tragedy. The Duke of Monmouth, Charles's eldest acknowledged illegitimate son, by Lucy Walter, grew up believing he deserved the throne. When Charles died without a legitimate heir in 1685, the crown passed to his Catholic brother James II. Monmouth, the Protestant darling, launched a rebellion in 1685. He lost at Sedgemoor. Captured and dragged to the scaffold, the executioner Jack Ketch botched the job horribly. Monmouth had begged for a clean death. Instead, it took multiple axe blows, sources vary from 5 to 8, before Ketch finally used a knife to saw through the last sinews while the body still twitched. This was Charles's own son, dying in agony, a direct consequence of his father's unchecked lifestyle. Charles himself died at 54 in February 1685 after a stroke, enduring 5 days of horrific treatments, bleeding, blistering poison. In his final moments, he whispered, "Let not poor Nellie starve," thinking of his beloved Nell Gwyn, not his wife or kingdom. The irony? All that prolific sex and zero legitimate heir. His death triggered the Glorious Revolution, constitutional upheaval, and decades of instability, all traceable to a king who chose pleasure over duty. Charles II didn't just live for pleasure. He weaponized it, and England paid the price. Which historical figure's dark secrets should we expose next? Drop it in the comments. And if you're ready for more untold history, hit subscribe, because the rabbit hole only gets deeper. What do you think? Was Charles II a charming rogue, or one of history's most destructive kings? They called him the Merry Monarch, charming, witty, always smiling. But behind the laughter was a reign soaked in humiliation, betrayal, disease, and blood. Charles II didn't just break hearts. He broke a queen, infected a court, fathered a small army of bastards, and set the stage for his own son's gruesome execution. This is the dark, unfiltered truth of Charles II, and it's worse than you think. Transition. Black screen with date, January 30th, 1649. It begins with horror. Young Charles, just 18, watches his father, King Charles I, dragged to a scaffold outside Whitehall. The axe falls. The executioner lifts the severed head. "Behold the head of a traitor!" The crowd roars. The prince flees into exile. For 11 years, he's a hunted man, penniless in Europe, same filthy clothes for months, family scattered and begging. He nearly dies in battles, storms, escapes. The lesson burns deep. His father ruled with iron morality and divine right, and lost his head for it. When Charles returns triumphant in 1660, he flips the script. No more control. No more Puritan gloom. He brings back theater, Christmas, dancing, and unchecked pleasure. The Restoration Court becomes Europe's most notorious party, orgies, gambling, endless affairs. Charles's addiction? Women. Not discreet flings, an entire system of royal mistresses. Show portraits, carousel of Charles II images. Here he is, tall, dark, charismatic, the ultimate Restoration playboy. He built secret passages in Whitehall Palace to slip between bedrooms. A rotation schedule. Mistresses ranked by favor, given titles, apartments, pensions, all paid by taxpayers. The top tier. First, Barbara Villiers, later Duchess of Cleveland, fiery, ambitious, breathtakingly beautiful. Show Barbara Villiers' portraits. She dominated early in his reign, bore him at least 5 acknowledged children, some say 6, and openly took other lovers, acrobats, playwrights, courtiers. Charles knew. He didn't care. Obsession blinded him. She screamed at the Queen in hallways, flaunted her power. Then came Louise de Kérouaille, Duchess of Portsmouth, elegant French spy, Catholic beauty sent by Louis XIV. Show Louise de Kérouaille portraits. She whispered secrets in his ear, tilted English policy toward France, all from the royal bed. Charles showered her with jewels, titles, fortunes. And the people's favorite, Nell Gwyn, orange seller turned actress, sharp-tongued and hilarious. Show Nell Gwyn portraits. From the streets to the palace. She once dangled their son out a window. Give him a title or down he goes. Charles laughed, created the boy Duke of St. Albans on the spot. Another time, she racked up massive debts. Creditors at the door? She told Charles. He paid instantly. Why? She made him laugh. But the real tragedy? Queen Catherine of Braganza. Show Queen Catherine portraits. Portuguese princess, devout Catholic, arrives in 1662 expecting romance. She barely speaks English. Within days, the bomb, Charles announces his pregnant mistress, Barbara Villiers, will be her lady of the bedchamber. Meaning Barbara would dress, undress, and attend Catherine every single day, the woman bedding her husband in her private rooms. Catherine fainted dead away from the humiliation. Woke up begging him to stop. He refused. Court ladies threatened to quit if she didn't accept. Charles had turned the palace against her. Show dramatic image of Catherine fainting or with Barbara. She suffered miscarriage after miscarriage, at least 6, some sources say more, desperate for a legitimate heir. Meanwhile, Charles proved fertile everywhere else. At least 12 to 14 acknowledged illegitimate children. Historians debate the exact count, but often list 14 from various mistresses. They got dukedoms, earldoms, wealth. Catherine? Whispers of barrenness, endless blame. Psychological torture, trapped, unable to divorce, watching her husband father a dynasty, just not with her. The rot spread deeper. In the 17th century, no antibiotics, poor hygiene, venereal diseases ravaged the aristocracy. Syphilis, the French pox, was rampant. Charles showed symptoms: recurring fevers, sores, endless mercury treatments, poisonous themselves. His mistresses had multiple lovers. Those lovers had families. Infection traced through the elite like a deadly web. Charles, the unwitting center, transitioned to darker tone. Then the ticking bomb exploded. The Duke of Monmouth, Charles's eldest acknowledged bastard, by Lucy Walter, believed he was the rightful heir, even rumored Charles secretly married his mother. When Charles died childless in 1685, at 54, after a stroke and days of brutal cures, bleeding, blistering, poison, the throne went to his Catholic brother James II. Monmouth rebelled, raised an army, lost at Sedgemoor, captured, tried, sentenced. On July 15, 1685, dragged to Tower Hill. He begged executioner Jack Ketch for a clean death, paid him extra. Ketch botched it horribly. Multiple axe blows. Sources say 5 to 8, each failing to sever the head. Monmouth rose after some, looking reproachfully at Ketch. Finally, Ketch pulled a knife to saw through the last sinews while the body twitched. A king's son, hacked apart like meat. Direct result of Charles's unchecked lifestyle. In his final hours, Charles whispered, "Let not poor Nellie starve." Not his wife. Not England. His mistress. The irony? All that sex, all those children, zero legitimate heir. His death sparked the Glorious Revolution, civil strife, religious crisis. England nearly torn apart, because one king chose pleasure over duty. So was Charles II a lovable rogue? Or history's most destructive playboy? Closing call to action. Drop in the comments, which royal scandal next? Hit subscribe for more dark history, the stories they bury. The rabbit hole goes deeper. Stay tuned.